What is one of the biggest hidden winners of the AI boom? It isn't Nvidia, it isn't AMD, and it isn't even a traditional chip company. We're talking about a company that's already deeply embedded inside Starlink. Today, a company supplying critical technology for satellites, RF networking, advanced packaging, power electronics, silicon carbide. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but I know it's important and I know it's going to make a bunch of money. So that's why we're here talking today about STMicroelectronics, or STEM as I like to call it. STM is the ticker. So let's jump right into it because I think there's massive potential that this company has for us. And I'm going to show you the trades, I'm going to show you the options on how we can capitalize on this part of the AI market that's right around the corner. Let's get right into it. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John. I got options. And today we're talking about STM. That's STMicroelectronics. So I went ahead this weekend and I started doing some digging on this company, and I listened to an investor call that they had with the president of STM. And I think the market may be massively misunderstanding what this company could become over the next 5 to 10 years. Because this isn't just an auto chip company anymore. What management is now describing sounds a lot more like AI infrastructure, advanced networking, orbital compute, and next-gen power architecture. And honestly, some of the comments coming out of the management sound borderline insane in the best possible way. So in this video, we're going to break down STM's hidden relationship with SpaceX and Starlink, why satellite semiconductor content is exploding, what orbital data centers could mean, why AI infrastructure may eventually move into space, and then we're going to do some rough back-of-the-napkin math on what the revenue opportunity could look like if SpaceX eventually deploys massive orbital compute infrastructure. And trust me, this is going to get wild. So, now first, this is not financial advice. Trading stocks and options, it's risky. You can lose all your money. This video is strictly my opinion and speculation based on public information and management commentary. Now, with that out of the way, let's start with the most important thing here. Most people still think STM is that European automotive semiconductor company, but it's not. And to be fair, that used to be mostly true. And I believe that's why this company is still undervalued, because the market, they're giving it some premium. They're giving it some love, but it's still much more suppressed compared to other AI players in the market. So STM became known for automotive chips, microcontrollers, industrial semiconductors, and silicon carbide power semis for EVs. But after listening to this management call, I think the company is trying to reposition itself into something much larger, because STM is increasingly showing up in AI infrastructure, advanced packaging, RF networking, satellite communication, AI edge compute, and now potentially orbital compute infrastructure, which is what Elon Musk is talking about doing with SpaceX. He's talking about AI data centers in space. And this company, STM, is going to be a major part of that build out. So let's get into it. The Starlink connection. One of the biggest things investors are missing is just how deeply STM is already embedded into the Starlink ecosystem. They've already delivered billions of chips into the Starlink ecosystem. Not millions, billions. That alone should probably make investors pay attention. But then management started discussing something much more important. They started talking about increasing semiconductor content per satellite, advanced packaging, AI server efficiency, and orbital data centers. Satellites are becoming computers. The president of STM recently said something very important on this call. He said, the content per satellite will only continue to increase. There's the massive statement, because what he's really saying here is that satellites are no longer just communication devices. They're becoming compute nodes, networking systems, AI infrastructure, edge compute platforms, everything I've already listed before. And then he gave an example. He said the newest generation of SpaceX satellites have terabit per second downlink capabilities and 160 gigabyte per second uplink capabilities. That is insane. That's not some little internet satellite anymore. That starts to sound more like hyperscale networking infrastructure, advanced telecom architecture, or even distributed AI networking. And the important thing is the more sophisticated these satellites become, the more semiconductor content they need, which means the more important STM is to this infrastructure. And then management said something even more interesting. They literally mentioned orbital data centers. The president of STM literally said, we did not factor in orbital data centers, which would completely change the economics. Because he was giving out all this guidance and projections of what the company is going to be doing. And he literally left out the orbital data centers because he doesn't even know how much money it's going to generate. So that line caught my attention immediately, and it should catch yours immediately as well. Because this was the STM management themselves acknowledging orbital compute as a serious future category. And if you think about it, there actually is a lot of logic to it. AI infrastructure is becoming power constrained. Data centers are exploding in power consumption. Some future AI campuses may eventually require multiple gigawatts of power, massive cooling systems, enormous networking fabrics, and huge amounts of electricity. At some point, Earth itself is literally bottlenecked. And it makes sense to move all this compute to space. And Elon Musk has realized this, and Google is now talking about it. I'm sure Amazon's going to get on board. I'm sure Microsoft's going to get on board. You're going to have orbital data centers from all these mega hyperscalers, and STM is going to be at the heart of it all. So why space compute might actually happen, we need to think about the direction SpaceX is moving. They are rapidly driving down launch costs with Starship. If launch costs collapse enough, then eventually you can begin thinking differently about infrastructure. And space actually has some very interesting properties for compute. You have nearly unlimited solar energy, no atmospheric cooling constraints, global networking capabilities, and potentially lower latency routing between regions. Now, there are obviously enormous engineering challenges involved in this. There's radiation, there's maintenance, thermal management, orbital debris, massive complexity. But the point is, STM management themselves are already discussing orbital data centers as a future economic driver. These semiconductor executives, they don't casually throw around ideas like orbital data center completely change the economics, especially not in public, unless they know this is legit and they know this is serious and they know that this is coming down the pipe. So what's the real secret sauce that STM has to offer to SpaceX? Because in my mind, I'm like, SpaceX, they're geniuses over there. They can do all this stuff themselves. Why do they need STM? But the real secret sauce is in the advanced packaging of the chips. So this is where it gets interesting. STM management started talking about a technology called panel level packaging, or PLP. And honestly, I think this is one of the most important parts of the whole thesis, because AI infrastructure is no longer just about transistor performance. Now it's about packaging, interconnects, power delivery, thermal efficiency, and system architecture. And that's where companies like Nvidia, TSMC, Broadcom, Intel, they're all obsessed with crossovers with chiplets, advanced substrates, and packaging technology. Packaging is becoming part of the compute architecture itself, because the way you package the chips affects everything about how the chip can perform. And STM says they developed panel level packaging combined with direct copper interconnect technology. So the president said their copper interconnect technology eliminates resistance and inductance. So that is huge. So power efficiency becomes everything now. Future AI racks are literally unable to perform because they do not have enough energy. So we have to figure out how to reduce the amount of heat coming out of these chips so we can reduce the cooling needed, which reduces the power needed. Everything is involved in how the chip is packaged, and that's what STM does. So we're talking about 500 kilowatt racks, 1 megawatt racks, massive GPU clusters, enormous networking systems. And at this scale, tiny inefficiencies can become gigantic. A little bit of electrical resistance suddenly means huge wasted energy, enormous heat generation, cooling problems, lower inefficiency. And STM is basically saying their architecture improves all of that. So this is extremely valuable to the future of AI infrastructure and to the current state of AI infrastructure. And now we need to think about space. In orbit, every watt matters even more. Every inefficiency becomes amplified. Every bit of heat is harder to manage. Every power conversion loss matters. So suddenly, STM's expertise in all these things becomes incredibly valuable. So another thing we need to talk about is the silicon carbide angle. This connects directly to another major trend, 800-volt infrastructure. STM is one of the leaders in silicon carbide power semiconductors. This connects directly to another major trend, which is 800-volt infrastructure. STM is one of the leaders in silicon carbide powered semiconductors. These are heavily used in EVs, fast charging industrial power systems, and increasingly AI infrastructure discussions. Why? Because higher voltage systems reduce current, reduce heat, improve efficiency, and improve power density. Another thing management discussed on this call was Ka band. This is very important. Current satellite systems heavily use Ku band, but future systems increasingly move toward Ka band. Ka band supports higher bandwidth, more throughput, faster communications, but it also becomes much more complex, much more power intensive, and harder to engineer. And STM management literally said complexity may go in our favor. That means bigger margins. You got to understand how the presidents and the CEOs, how they talk on these calls. When they say complexity may go in our favor, they're saying higher margin business. So STM could capture more value as satellite systems become more sophisticated. So here is the back of the napkin revenue math, because we need to break down how we're going to make money off this. Now, let's do the crazy part first. So let's imagine a future where orbital AI infrastructure actually becomes real, and I believe it's going to be real. I don't know when, but I think it's closer than we all think. And again, this is all speculation, but let's logically just walk through this. So suppose SpaceX eventually deploys 100 gigawatts per year of orbital compute infrastructure. This is the high end, the bull case that Elon Musk is touting out. He's touting out this 100 gigawatts a year of compute that we're going to be pumping out into space, having these space orbital data center satellites just floating around, just pumping AI to everybody. And STM is going to be a part of it all. So this is an absolutely gigantic number. That would literally imply thousands of launches. So what kind of infrastructure spend are we talking about here? We're talking about the early orbital compute systems could easily cost 10 million to 25 million per megawatt deployed. So 100 gigawatts could roughly imply around 1 trillion to $2.5 trillion of annual infrastructure deployment. That's just absolutely insane. Now, obviously, STM would not capture all of that. They're not making the actual GPUs. We're going to leave that to Nvidia. We're going to leave that to AMD. And we're going to leave that to SpaceX. But they could participate in the power systems, the RF connecting, the advanced packaging like we talked about, the interconnects, the satellite electronics, edge compute controllers, silicon carbide, and power conversion. So let's say STM captures 1 to 2% of that ecosystem. That could be $15 to $30 billion of annual revenue for STM. So let me put this in your perspective. STM's entire company does $12 billion in revenue currently. So orbital infrastructure alone could eventually exceed the company's entire current business as it stands today. So now again, this is the ultra bull case scenario. But the important thing is STM management themselves are the ones talking about this. They're telling us about orbital data centers. They're telling us they're already partnered with SpaceX for Starlink. Starlink is already the bull case. This is the cream on the top. And this company is only valued at $59 billion today because they're coming off of, they have this weight on their shoulders from the EVs and from their past, which if you look at their earnings, they're inflecting right now. Their cash flows are inflecting right now. Their operating cash flow is inflecting right now. And it's going to go ballistic. So this is a completely different narrative. This is going to be a completely different company. This is going to be completely different margins. This is going to be completely different revenue. And we need to be a part of it. So if investors begin viewing STM as this AI infrastructure company instead of just this auto chip company, you're going to see the valuation of this company keep going up. It's already at 70 times last year's earnings. But when you look at next year's earnings, you're trading at like 50 times. But let's jump into the option trade here. Now, I think STM could easily, by the end of 2028, be trading over $140 a share. I think that's pretty much in the bag. Not financial advice, lose your own money at your own risk. But let's look at the option trade that I have picked out here. So here I have a call debit spread where you are buying the $60 call, the theoretical you, not the actual you, and you are selling the $80 call, expiring January 21st, 2028. This is way below where I think STM will end the year of 2028. I think STM will end the year well over $100 in 2028. So this option is at the beginning of 2028 because this is as far out as I can go right now. As time goes on and these option chains start coming out later and later, I'm sure I'm going to be looking at those, and I'm sure I'm going to be moving up higher to that 140 price target for STM. But as of right now, this is a great trade that I see on the market. So this option trade, when you buy the 60 and you sell the 80, as I'm making this video, goes for about $600. So you're going to pay $600. Now, what happens if STM is above $80 when this call expires? If STM is above $80 when this call expires, January 21st, 2028, then this option's entire value will get realized, which is $2,000. So it's $600 turns to $2,000. But this is not financial advice. That's the trade idea I have for you. This is STM, STMicroelectronics. Go check out the May 4th investor presentation that they did too long ago. I mean, today's May 11th, so that was May 4th. They just came out and had this whole conversation explaining everything I explained in this video in much more detail. And I'll be honest, I don't know half the stuff they're talking about. But when they're talking about these numbers and they're talking about these potential TAMs, and I'm backtracking, I'm doing the back of the envelope math, it sounds like STM's going to have to be a much bigger company than it is today for them to do what they're talking about. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you found it informative, maybe a little helpful in your investing journey. Check out feedmetrades.com If you want to track your covered calls, if you want to track your cash secured puts, if you want to track all your option trades, you can do that on feedmetrades.com. You get a 30-day free trial. And make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video, and stay tuned for the next one. Because guess what? If you don't subscribe, you might never see me again. And I want to see you again. Drop a comment below on stocks that you're looking at. Drop a comment below on different call debit spreads that you're interested in. I'm always curious about what different options people have that they're looking at, that they're trading, and different opportunities that are in the market. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.